Scientific methodology is at the heart of science, but that vital heart is only part of the full body of science. Science and scientists operate in the context of the scientific community and the society at large. They play an important role in many decisions we make individually and as a society. In this section, we're going to take a look at science in context. So, get your papers ready for your notes. Remember, wide right, skinny left, and grab a pen or pencil. And I'll see you on the next slide. Scientific methodology is linked to exploration and discovery. But where do observations and questions come from in the first place? They're inspired by scientific attitudes, practical problems, and new technology. So let's take a closer look at the attitudes or habits of mind that good scientists share. Curiosity is said to have killed the cat, but it seldom kills a scientist, at least not right away. Curiosity is an inquisitiveness or an eager desire to learn. Scientists often ask obvious questions that no one else thought to ask, like, why did the apple fall down instead of sideways? Just as police will not arrest a suspect without evidence, scientists refuse to accept explanations without evidence. By their nature, scientists are very skeptical. They not only question explanations and hypotheses, but they actively design experiments to prove or refute a hypothesis. And unlike Grumpy Cat here, scientists are very open-minded. They would be the first ones to applaud a scientist who was able to refute an idea or a theory that they personally believed or developed. Because more experiments just mean more knowledge. Scientists also need to be able to think creatively or out of the box. They need to be able to design experiments that yield accurate data. If you watch Mythbusters, they are very, very good at thinking creatively to solve a given problem. Ideas for scientific investigations most often arise from practical problems: the need for better light, a better form of transportation, a better way to build things, frequent flooding in an area of dense population. The list goes on. And sometimes when a scientist is trying to solve one practical problem, he or she ends up solving a different problem altogether. Two great examples of this are yellow sticky notes and Toll House cookies, better known as chocolate chip cookies. Look them up. They're both great stories of a scientist solving a problem that they didn't intend to solve. Technology and science and society are closely linked. Scientific discoveries often lead to technological developments, which in turn allow scientists to ask new questions and gather data in new ways. These technological advances also have a huge impact on daily life. Ask your grandparents about how they did things back in the day. There was life before computers, and the inventors of the first computer at IBM never thought their invention would go from this that you see in the picture here to this. Because of technology, we have so many advantages in everyday life, and the advantages in science are immeasurable. Diseases have been eradicated. Surgeries that were once a dream are now reality. The list is endless. Data collection and analysis can take a very long time, months or even years. But when researchers can finally communicate their experiment and their results, the whole scientific community listens. Communicating and sharing these results and thoughts are the lifeblood of modern science. But before researchers can get too excited, their results must pass some pretty stringent tests. That is the test of peer review. Anonymous, independent experts review the article and they look for oversights or bias, fraud, or mistakes. It makes it feel more like a fair test. So when the results are published, the sources are very, very credible. This guarantees that the work of a scientist or a group of scientists isn't necessarily correct, but it meets the standards of proof that are set by the scientific community. Once the research has been published, a new dynamic exists. Scientists must fit this new research into their current understanding. More questions are sparked and new hypotheses are generated, leading to more experiments and more studies. It's a never-ending cycle. We're going to talk real briefly right now about theory and law. The word theory applies to a well-tested explanation that unifies a broad range of observations and hypotheses. Theories enable a scientist to make accurate predictions about new situations. In the diagram here, you see kind of the process that science goes through to come up with theories. And if you think about it, there's lots and lots of theories. Okay, the theory of evolution, the theory of plate tectonics, the Big Bang theory. But then there are also some laws. Laws are very, very specific. More about that in a little bit. Galileo hypothesized long ago that in the absence of air resistance, objects would fall at the same rate. Okay, this was called the theory of gravity, because for a while we really couldn't prove it one way or the other. For hundreds of years that theory was widely accepted as a law because it governs just the way things fall. But when we were able to test this in a new situation, namely on the moon, that's the first thing we did. Darwin made many, many observations and hypotheses about changes in nature over time. Hundreds of additional examples were collected, and he developed the theory of evolution by natural selection. Useful theories have been thoroughly tested and supported by many, many, many lines of evidence. It becomes the dominant view among scientists. But no theory is considered the absolute truth. Science is always changing, and if new evidence is uncovered, the theory may be revised or even totally replaced. Which leads us to law. As we said, a law governs a very specific area, and a law, for the most part, is accepted as truth. It's very, very uncommon in science to change a law. It is much more common that a theory gets revised or changed. If you think about just a few topics, like you see here in this picture, you can see how easily science is closely related to society. How many health-related things do you need to understand to protect your life and those of the lives of those around you? Now think about energy. How should we produce electricity? What is the best way that won't upset the environment? What about transportation? The list goes on and on. Using science involves understanding its context within our society and its limitations. This diagram comes from your textbook, and it shows very well the role that science plays in society. You can see it's not a simple answer. Science affects practically every facet of our lives, from building knowledge to informing policy to addressing societal issues. It doesn't end. Scientists are concerned only with natural phenomena. So when scientists explain, their thoughts are always void, or they try to keep their thoughts void of ethical or moral viewpoints. One example is the question of life. Scientists seek to explain in biological terms what life is. They seek to explain how it operates and how life changes over time. But they cannot answer questions about why life exists or what the meaning of life is in any scientific way at all. We can't measure that. That's the realm of theologians and philosophers and lawmakers. But scientists will often push ethics and morality as technology advances. Events like open heart surgery and heart transplants were once considered taboo by society. But as technology pushed science, science pushes society. And society must answer some very difficult questions. Science can tell society how the technology can be used or applied, but not whether it should be applied or not. Society has to answer that question. Which leads us to our next thought. The way science is applied in society can be affected by bias. Although science aims to be objective, scientists are only human. Society, and sometimes even scientists, will misinterpret or misapply data to prove a certain fact. We should always try to look for a fair, balanced approach to any discussion, whether it's scientific or political. Science will keep changing as long as we keep asking questions and exploring. As students of science, we should try not just to memorize and believe scientific facts, but rather to understand how scientists develop their ideas, how science helps you to make decisions, how science affects your everyday life. If we can predict the consequences of our actions, then we can take an active role in directing our future. It's important to understand how science works. We can appreciate the power and the limitations of science then. So, to finish up, 1, go over your notes. If you need to, go back over parts of this presentation. Then, get with a friend or a classmate. That should say of a or not of. Get with a friend or a classmate. Fill in any gaps there are in your notes. Revise them as needed. Now, draw a line at the end of your notes and summarize this section. Tell me what you learned. What were the main ideas? What were some supporting ideas? 3 to 5 sentences is all it should take. Then go over to the left-hand column and write your questions. Remember, 3 level 1 questions, that's book only, 2 level 2 questions, book and brain, and 1 level 3 question, brain only. Refer back to your handout for the different types of questions if you need to. Then bring your completed notes to class next week because we'll be using them. If you have any questions, come see me. See you in class, guys.